be greatly in the public interest if these two parties, now we have two different cases, but it will be interesting if kind of a plea deal is negotiated in these cases, in the interest of the family, in the interest of the public, so that this matter is resolved. Um, you know, Zainabu could be approached for a plea deal in her case, where the case could be she could plead to a lesser charge, and the case is the bigger charges are dismissed, so she can get her freedom. And Bob can also plead to a lesser charge, and the bigger charge against her could be dismissed. And these families can, enter into a negotiation and see how they will, this matter will be resolved in a way that works for each party. I think that would be in the public interest. It will be also save the country in terms of cost. Let me say all the parties in terms of cost and time. Plea deals are pretty important in that trials are expensive and they're time consuming, and that is what makes plea deals very attractive also to many litigants. But I think also at some point executive intervention may also be considered. Barrow has the power of pardon, and the power of pardon, my understanding is, can be applied at any time of the trial, before trial, during trial, after trial. It can be applied anytime. So that possibly could be considered also, and considering that, the parties can enter into some form of arrangement where that will be fair to all of them, all parties, and then a presidential pardon could be considered because both are young people and they are quite active economically in the country. But the cases actually have also divided the country a lot. There's a lot of talk about that. That's what I wanted to say about that case, Dr. Conteh. I also wanted to briefly mention the let's just go into our topics. I wanted to say briefly about something that also happened in the U.S. With regards to our friend President Trump. Finally, the FBI descended on his Mar-a-Lago residence and extracted some boxes of documents that are considered classified, top secret documents. I'm not going to say much about Trump's issue. Trump is a very divisive person, but he's been an extraordinary president. So these are extraordinary times. Extraordinary person such as Trump can only attract extraordinary measures. But that's that for the U.S. Dr. Conteh, for our topics. The Minister of Digital Infrastructure, Usman Ba, has made statements, and this is reported widely in the Gambian media and also on the online media. He is strongly suggesting privatization of Gamcel for several reasons. The Gamcel is not running efficiently. They're spending too much money on operations. They have no cash flows. Therefore, they are unable to invest into development, better services for the people, simply because they have no cash flows. They are not being managed properly. And these are issues we talk about consistently, Dr. Conteh. These SOEs, state-owned enterprises, are running very inefficiently. They are unable to compete. They are unable to improve services for the Gambian people simply because they are not being run properly. And they are not creating cash flow to invest into development at all. So I'm so glad that Mr. Barr brought these things out for the public to see. And I'm sure most Gambians would agree with this. And Gamcel is still running on 3G. Can you believe that? People are talking about 5G. This uh, state-owned company is still running on 3G. Is not able to invest into any development. They have high operation cost, no cash flows. Um, they're not creating revenue. They're not generating any revenue um, for the government in many, many years. In fact, many of these companies are depending on government intervention to survive. So, Gamcel, every time I try to say Gamcel, I want to say Gamtel. Gamtel, Gamcel have not been creating revenue for many, many years. So I'm so glad, Dr. Conteh, somebody is finally talking about these things. And that is why I think we have a second favorite guy in Barrow's cabinet, in addition to Badara Juve. So I just have to talk about this because I was so thrilled when I heard somebody speaking, um, like this. This is my view for a very long time. I think it is time we reform, at least reform these state-owned enterprises. Dr. Conte.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually looking at the numbers here because I also fault the auditor.
Mhm.
Uh, Let me go back because what's happening, is that Facebook will block our presentation if I use, the data to show. So literally have to look at the thing first. But I'm looking at the annual report. I'm looking at the auditor's report,
Mhm.
and I want to see uh, is it CAMC? Hold on, let me find the auditor's name. It's They just put the bank's names here, and I want to look at the statement first, the auditor's report, because that's more important. Because that's why I want to try to base my okay. It's called Accord Associates, and so they talked about the uncertainty, material uncertainty related to going concern. And it says that we draw attention to the fact that the entity, which is Gamcel, this is 2019 auditor's report, has been making losses consistently over the years. We also draw attention to note 16 million routine earnings and page 13 statement of profit or loss and page 19 A14 statement of financial position, which shows the current year loss stands at 93 million. But I want to go back to that. Gamcel had in 2019, they had a total revenues of 355 million. The cost of sales, excluding administrative cost, was 152 million, or say 153 million. For operating profit, or no, for gross profit of 202 million. So the administrative costs, if you add the 202 plus 93, 300, yeah, 295 million. And that's why Gamcel has had a loss of 93 million. But then Having said that, the company continues to have negative routine earnings, so which means that the company had uh, debit of routine earnings for quite some time. It rose from 600 and just give me 1 second here. Uh, yeah, from for it rose from 600 and some million to 861 million. And I'm looking at they have the profit and loss. They got on a different page. The administrative cost 143 million. They say staff costs 70 million. Depreciation and amortization 68 million. So their net operating expenses 281 million. So the operating loss was 79 million for 2019. So now let's be realistic here. The loss after taxes, because basically they had a tax benefit, say taxation. Nine, how can you tax someone when you have a loss? That should be a tax benefit. So they have a 93 million. But the fact of the matter is, the company cannot do anything significant in terms of product development when it doesn't have the earnings or the cash to ascertain it. And I'm looking at the cash and bank. That's only 60,000. No, let's say, yeah, 6 million in cash. And so as a result of that, I want to go and look at the statement of cash flows. They have the statement of changes in equity. And we look at the statement of cash flows because that's more critical.
Right.
Because that's going to enable you, whether it is the operating, financing, or investing activities,
Right.
to see they had operating loss of 79 million, but the auditors reported 93 million. So in my view, there is a discrepancy there, because if you're going to take the loss into the statement of cash flows, it should be either net profit or net loss. So the adjustments from operating activities, the operating profit before working capital, and the cash received. I'm looking at the fact, that cash flows from investing activities is very modest, only 10 million. I'm looking at the cash flows from financing activities. So how can you have a company that can grow if we don't have people investing in the company? So I can see Minister Barr's argument to say that the financing activity is low, and the investing activity, a modest 10 million, in my view, is very low. So most of the financing, guess what it is? It is through debt.
Right.
So we don't have any equity financing. So how on earth can you get a company to grow when we don't have investors other than the government?
And
So
actually, you can't get any investors because
you can't
any
get any investment.
no,
But the saddest thing about this company is that the net cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year, only 5 million.
Right.
That's very scary, isn't it?
It is.
So this invites the point, that if the minister is talking about privatizing Gamcel, then Gamtel should be privatized too. Because we're talking about digital economy. In fact, I don't even see the validity of having a ministry of digital economy. In my view, it should be part of the Ministry of Finance. Well, Senegal has it, because I looked at the ministers on the Macky Sall. He has a Minister of Digital Economy. So we Gambians say we want to have it. Senegal also has the Minister of Civil Service, or what they call it, policy, whatever, delivery.
Yeah.
You have it in Senegal, we say we want to have it. So, but people should know, that I still support the president, but I think he's been misled. This goes on and on and on and on, and there is no incentive whatsoever to have these these state-owned enterprises, SOEs. They are getting for subvention, which means that your tax dollars are being used. And those in the state house, please, they should know, that in most societies, when they talk about, when they want to talk about policy, they invite people of different disciplines, different orientations to come and bring their ideas. But unfortunately, in the Gambia, they don't do that.
Right.
And then when you try to find a different solutions to the problem, they say you are against the president's development agenda. I really, if the president ever comes to the United States and he wants to have a forum, I'm going to try to make myself available to tell him my frustration with that. Because the people who are bringing these ideas to you, one cannot say that they cannot say that their ideas are supreme to other people's ideas. So I don't want to take much of the time, but by the minister advocating for privatization, maybe this will begin the clock. Because why are you going to have an unprofitable state-owned enterprise that is eating our lunch continuously? And there is no, because the auditors have given a report. But another thing the government should try to do, this is 2019, there is no auditor's report on any of the state-owned enterprises in the Gambia that has a 2020 report. I also want to challenge the government that the Gambia Revenue Authority always brags about we have collected 1.1 billion because that's their threshold. The last time they did the report was from January to April. So we are paying folks at the Ministry of Finance. We don't have any report on how much they collected. The Gambia Revenue Authority cannot tell Gambians how much tax revenue was collected in May. They have yet to tell us how much was collected in June. So these are things that the president should be concerned about, because you cannot have expenditure without having revenue. And we will continue to talk. And anytime the president comes here, I'm going to make myself available to tell him my frustration.
Yeah, and actually, Dr. Conteh, I think the Minister of Finance just made a statement which seems to partly indict the Gambia Revenue Authority. He said that decline in revenue, by 11% decline in revenue, is partly due to poor tax collection.
Well,
So
but he has yet to implement the what recommendations that we have been making to say that
right,
when we talk about internal controls,
right,
policies and procedures, we're talking about segregation of duties,
right,
ACR.
right,
Okay, A stands for authorization, C means custody, R means recording.
right,
Yet still the Gambia Revenue Authority still has those three responsibilities.
right.
And again, if you doubt me, hire someone in the Gambia to go to some of these shops in the evening. Gambia Revenue Authority employees go there to collect revenues cash from these people for taxes. Tell me, if they take the money home, how much of that money actually goes to the treasury? I want someone to help me to tell me why is it that up till today's day, Minister Keita, and I know that he's a follower of mine, I still want you to please, an accountant should be objective and what is going on in our country in terms of revenue collection. These Gambia Revenue Authority, they can sue me if they want to, but I'll keep on saying it. 30% of the revenues that we're supposed to have goes to the government. 30% goes to the Gambia revenue employees, and 30% goes to the taxpayer, the people who are supposed to pay taxes. So if we are able to get rid of these leakages, we maybe can increase revenue. But what I don't understand, when the minister said that the tax revenue went down by 3.3 billion, why on earth will anyone increase salaries? I stop right there.
Very well said. Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Thank you for saying. I only hope that somebody in the State House listens to people like Mr. Ba, the Digital Infrastructure Minister,
Are you sure?
and also Mr. Badara Juve. Uh, those are the two people, as we speak now, speaking from the fringes, from the margins. And I think all change comes from the margins. We need to listen to people who on the margins, speaking from the margins, right? They are different from everybody else. So I think these two people are outstanding people. They have very good ideas that we need to listen to and use their ideas to start a conversation about our country. I definitely endorse Mr. Ba's position on Gamcel and all our state-owned enterprises. And this is something that Conteh we have consistently talked about here. And I'm just glad that somebody in the cabinet is now talking about them. And I hope the president listens to him and a conversation begins about how to implement some of these ideas to help manage our country properly. That's that, Dr. Conteh. So much on that. We also want to briefly look at the Banjul rehabilitation project. Uh, that has been conducted by Guy Enterprise. The project is under critical review lately because of the flooding in much of urban Gambia, but particularly Banjul, that has benefited from some 40 something million dollars project to rehabilitate the roads, the drainage system, and the sewage system in the capital. That project completed, but buckled in the face of the forced rains in the country. So many are pointing fingers to that project for being the culprit of the major flooding. It's never been seen before in Banjul. So we want to look at that issue a little bit. Um, and I think there is an audit report on this Guy Enterprise Banjul Rehabilitation Project. And the report is also covered in in the media extensively. So there are actually, it looks like there are conflicting numbers. The audit report indicated some 36 million, actually $35.7 million was the cost of the project in Banjul Rehabilitation Project. I know some 40 million has been widely circulating. So I'm not quite sure which is which, but the auditor's report indicated 35.7 million as the cost of the project. Dr. Conteh, the problems that this project are showing now probably are rooted in the way the project was conceived and the way it was implemented. The audit report has made some very damning statements about the manner in which the project was even tendered. There was no tendering process, as the auditor's report indicated. It was completely single-sourced, and it wasn't pre-financed as claimed. Some 63% of the cost was paid upfront. So it's very, very disturbing that something like that could happen. When you have a major project like this, it did not go through the proper way of contracting. So what ended up happening is that the Gambians may have not benefited from hiring the most competent contractor. And also the Gambians may not have benefited from lower cost in paying for this contract, this project in Banjul. If we had allowed the tendering process to go, we probably would end up getting a more competent contractor and also one who can carry this project out at a more, at a better price for the taxpayers of the Gambia. So the whole idea of a tendering process is centered on these principles. You get a contractor who is more qualified and more competent, and also you get a contractor who is better able to do this project at a lower cost. Because it all comes to competency and experience and credibility. If a company is more competent to do a project, they are more likely to be able to do that project at a lower cost, right, than a company that is incompetent, doesn't have the capacity to do the project. They are not going to be able to manage their cost properly. So at the end of the day, government is going to pay more of taxpayers' money for that project, right? So that is the problem that started with this project. It is even claimed in the auditor's report that Guy actually embarked on this Banjul work even before the contract was signed. So, I don't know. It looks like we have a formal process of assigning this contract, nonetheless to Guy Enterprise, but there is also an informal process that directed him to go ahead and begin the project. So there are two systems, very typical of Gambia. We typically in almost all of our doings in government and in business, we have a stipulated formal system, which usually is abandoned or shortcut for an informal system that usually stifles government processes and eventually end up costing government and the public huge amounts of money. So it looks like we've seen the same thing in this, and the report also said that even the Ministry of Justice warned the government to make sure that there is a performance security on this project. That simply means that there is a guarantee that this project will work, at least for a certain number of years. Like every product, if you buy a product, there is an expectation of merchandisability. The product is expected to perform, right? Otherwise it will be a sham product. It will be a sham product, a product that is meant for fraud, right? So there should have been that performance security where Guy Enterprise would guarantee that they would guarantee the quality of this project. That means the project will perform at least for a limited number of years. Failure of that, they will be responsible for fixing that problem, repairing it, right? Unfortunately, this did not happen. The government did not listen to that advice. My understanding, and based on the report of the auditor's office. So that's why we are where we are today. And it also looks like Dr. Conteh, Guy Enterprise did not pay taxes on these, on the revenue collected on this project. The monies received, it looks like the taxes were waived for them, possibly illegally. So, we are where we are. It also, and that is why I said last week that the floods in the Gambia that happened last week, floods are normal. They're part of, they're part of a natural cycle, right? Floods happen. They happen in the U.S. Kentucky was flooded at the same time that Gambia was flooding. Large parts of it. Floods happen, natural disasters happen. That's a given. We all understand that. But the floods in the Gambia, Dr. Conteh, every time we have a natural disaster in the Gambia, it exposes the weaknesses of our response system, the weaknesses of our institutions, the weaknesses of our systems of operation. And that is the sad part. We should have robust systems in place. Our government institutions should be able to respond adequately when these kind of things happen. But it looks like every time there's a disaster, we are caught off guard. There is no preparation. There is no early warning systems. There are no functional equipments, to deal with these issues. So, and that is what happened in Banjul. So, we were caught totally off guard. The project that everybody relied on was already in shambles before the storms. They were non-performing. The equipment that were supposed to be pumping water out of Banjul were dysfunctional. And, NDMA, National Disaster Administration, were unprepared to deal with these issues. And we know these things happen perennially, almost annually. There are large parts of the country in the urban areas, particularly, that flood annually. Yet we don't have any checklist of response. We don't have any emergency audit system that checks these things before the rain starts. So there can be a response mechanism in place to respond almost immediately when these things happen. So, in my view, I'm not faulting the fact that there is flooding. Nobody is faulting that. That is not totally unexpected. It's a natural disaster. They happen. They happen everywhere. They happen in developed countries. They happen in, but what we are faulting is our response system, our preparedness, our short-sightedness in expecting and preparing for these things so that we could save our people all the suffering and the hardship they went through. And so that is what we are just basically highlighting here, Dr. Conteh.
Well, I can remember as a kid when our people used to go to the riverside to cut down bamboos and they made them for chairs. We even made some small little lorries. Little did I know that over the years, cutting down mangroves really creates flooding. I was just wondering with the sand mining at the Denton Bridge. Today, if somebody posted some stuff, but I saw a response by a Gambian I never thought would ever respond to such. Then I said, wow, this is for real then. And people are now calling to rebuild the bridge. And I said, but how can you rebuild a bridge when your port city is in Banjul? And then you have to get most of those things out of Banjul to come where to go to the combos. And that's why we've been saying that there should be an alternate port. They should have one over in Bara and also somewhere in Tujereng if possible, or maybe going down to someone even told me Kartong. So we are sitting down here, and I don't know whether you saw the video. Mr. Robinson put that on Facebook yesterday or day before. The tides, the water was all the way on Bone Road.
Yeah, I saw that.
But with no guardrail.
Yeah.
So with no guardrail, here in this country, if the river is, if there is heavy tide, they close the roads.
Right.
But guess what's happening in the Gambia? No, zero. So I was just wondering, because I don't want to name names, but come on. With all the mangroves, when you are heading towards Banjul on the right, and now by doing the sand mining, it actually increased the depth of the water. So I was watching the tide. I said, wait a minute. So this tide is heading towards Bone Road. So if we flip it, there is a possibility that the tide actually goes towards the right side. Because if you are in Banjul, whenever you have a tide, the water comes towards us, right?
Right.
So then if there is tide over there at Denton Bridge, the water will come towards the bridge.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
So, and if there is heavy rain, when the sea rises, the water is coming towards the bridge.
Right.
So all those tributaries going all the way behind mile 2, I'm beginning to believe that the water actually ended up going through there and overflowed over to Bond Road and then to Banjul. And I'm thinking, I wish, Dr. Jaite, who studied, what's the professor?
Geology.
Geology. Who studied geology? Can just give us some kind of information, and maybe if you can get him one day, we can engage him. I know he's a government official, but he can just tell us the effect of sand mining.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I was actually thinking when they wanted to bring the sand mining to Gambia about a year ago, I was wondering whether they could do it somewhere around Woodley, so that way fresh water would flow inside. But by them doing the sand mining at Denton Bridge, salt water will be going.
Yeah. In fact, I think the whole of the coastal region would not be a good place for sand mining.
Well,
This Banjul particularly, this these are the defenses of the island. If you keep taking them out, in the long run, it's not really good for the for the island at all. And I think also what we might end up seeing at Bond Road, because we know what we saw in that video. It's not just water, overflowing, onto the road,
It's
but
fine.
if you look at the mechanism of water action,
Mhm.
we're gonna quickly see that road being gradually cut by the water.
I
It's
was just thinking about that.
it's gonna be, yeah, the water is gonna cut through it. It's gonna be eating it because water action. There's both a mechanical action of the water hitting the rock pieces and dislodging them, but
We
also
don't have
there's
any. We don't have any rocks on the side there, right?
no, but the material of that made of the road itself is gonna be knocked out in place by the force of the water. But also there's a chemical process going on also. A lot of this water dissolves a lot of these chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And by them dissolved in water, they form other substances that can further eat the material they come into contact with. So there's going to be a combined, mix of forces operating there, chemically, mechanically. So eventually we might see that road being destroyed beyond repair. And, there's a purpose why that road was created. So we need to have a plan about dealing with these issues. Without a concerted plan and effort, I think we're going to continue to face serious challenges, not only in Banjul but across the country. Gambia is pretty much a river valley. One can say it's pretty flat, and there's a river running right through it. So both banks, are pretty vulnerable. It is worse on the south bank than the north bank, but you know that's the true fact about the Gambia. So we need to be aware of this, and like you said, we need to remove the pressure on the south bank by opening up the north bank for some of these things, not only a port but also for settlement. And so I think Gambia, we should be bold enough and put a bridge between Bara and Banjul, and forever, open up the entire length and breadth of the Gambia for development. Dr. Conteh, any final word before we close this? I think that's all I have this week.
Well, this same Adam guy, so they just approved another contract for 25 million for him.
Yes, KMC, right?
No, this is about Jew factory or something.
Well, KMC is also giving a contract to build their market for, is it 70 million?
70?
Something like that, yes. $70 million dollar contract to build the market that the KMC is about to construct. That contract also went to Guy Construction. So
you said $70 million or 70 million?
70. Let me look at my numbers. I think it is 70 million.
A market for that?
Yes, I believe so. If I got $7 million actually. $7 million.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, $7 million awarded to the same.
And where are they going to have this, in Talending or what?
I'm not quite sure about the location, but it is somewhere around Serakunda area, I think. Probably Talending. I may have to look at the location, but
they better check Talending, because you're not going to put a market in a flood zone.
Right. I hope there will be better planning this time, and hopefully it looks like the tender is already done. So I don't know whether it went through the proper channels or not. But
so why civil society that this man can just get anything?
I know, and especially with the track record that he has, You
Well,
know,
do we even know after the rain whether the roads are good in Banjul?
right. And one might be tempted to think that he's a Gambian company, needs to be supported, but we still have to follow due process,
Well,
right?
somebody told me that he has his headquarters in Senegal.
Yeah, I think. I think he's actually based in Senegal. I stand to be
Hmm.
corrected on this, but he has he has some he has a location. He is connected to Senegal somehow. Um, but it doesn't matter to me that much.
Well, it
Just that
matters
I'm more
because no,
concerned
it
about
matters. It matters in a way
due pro.
because if by having in Senegal, the money goes to Senegal, it doesn't stay in the Gambia. Let's be
That,
realistic.
that that is true. But if they follow due process to make sure that Gambian money is, spent the best way in the interest of the taxpayers, I would be quite comfortable with that. Because I think ultimately Gambian companies and Senegalese companies can compete in both countries. I think we should really integrate the two economies. Gambian economy is too small to very vibrant by itself. An integration with a larger economy like Senegal could be
Mhm.
beneficial. But we have to do this in equal terms. We have to do
Okay.
it in a way that is beneficial to Gambians as well.
Okay.
Uh,
The few minutes. Sorry, the few minutes that we have. Do you want
yeah,
me to add something?
yeah, go ahead.
I really want to revisit what Taff said.
Yeah, somebody brought that to my attention yesterday.
Yeah, because I had the same
Yeah,
that a gentleman emailed me.
yeah,
I'm not going to disclose. I was asking for help.
yeah,
I asked the person who their father was.
yeah.
The individual said that I was being disrespectful.
Wow.
I said disrespectful. I want to know who your parents are.
Yeah.
So Taft started a conversation.
Mm.
In my view, he shouldn't run away from. Uh, in-kind donations
Yeah.
should be appropriate under some circumstances. An 18-year-old, 19-year-old asking for scholarship or sponsorship, Taft should engage them to come and work at his place on the weekends because then he will be teaching them leadership skills and work ethics. Because I'm literally confused to a sense where, and I saw a lot of postings, people were talking about, oh, he's a true Muslim, should be helping, should be doing this, should be doing that. And I have an Arab friend I work with, I asked him those questions, he said no. So we have this in our culture. I have no problem helping anyone because I even face it myself. To say, if you want me to do this, I want you to go to my farm and help me with making cinder blocks, mold blocks. They won't do it. So we are here in diaspora. I'm not trying to tough as a business person and tough as a Gambian living in the Gambia and seeing what he actually goes through daily. Maybe choice of words, what he said, he probably could have framed it differently. But I really challenge him to revisit this conversation, not to shut the door, to say that I can't help, I can't do this. No. Anyone, any 18-year-old, 19-year-old who wants to be sponsored should be able to do some work at his job, workplace. Because seeing those women out there picking, working, and you got somebody who's gonna stay home, and then we have to be realistic. Yeah, come on. Taff is running a business. I'm not trying to defend I don't want anyone to misinterpret me. I'm not trying to defend his business ethics. That's not what I'm here for. But I'm looking at the separation, business legal entity of that. This man, yeah, he say he works. Well, everybody does in a way. But please, Mr. Njai, continue on with this conversation. I wish he even had not apologized. Continue on with it. I would like for Taft to continue on with this conversation, because then we might also ask him about, Taft, how did you get your wealth? Hello? But to be asking for sponsorship, scholarships, you have 18, 19-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds. So you're giving them freebie, but they cannot give you anything in return. That, Taft cannot file taxes to claim those donations. Come on, I mean, let's be realistic here. Let's be realistic. I hope he continues on with this conversation, because he'll be doing more good than harm. Changing, if Taft can change 10 Gambians, don't worry about how many are attacking you. And again, I don't want anyone to misquote me. Taft as a businessman and how he got his wealth, it's not the conversation I'm having. It's a conversation I'm saying that if he's going to give scholarships and sponsorship, the people that he's giving sponsorships to and they are in the Gambia, they should also be contributing. They should also be working somewhere, even on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. They should be doing something for him. And then maybe if all of us do that, then we can grow our nation. But look at now, this Nawatan is going. Kids are no longer on the farm. And then we are sitting down complaining that we don't have any food to eat. So I just want to commend him for that. But again, I don't want anyone to misinterpret me to say that I'm supporting Taft for everything. No, I'm talking about Taft as a business person who talks about giving sponsorship and scholarships. The scholarships that he's even here in this country, if you're going to get scholarship, there are certain things you do, but people want freebie, and then they're going to say, well, that's Muslims, we're supposed to be helping each other. That one, I just don't get it. So I just want to throw out there, and Taft or any of his agents are listening. I just said I commend him for the service that he's doing to help kids for sponsorship and scholarship. I'm not talking about his business, how he got his wealth. That's not the topic of discussion. But I would like for Mr. Taft Mustafa Njai to continue on with this conversation, because if Taft can change 5 people out of 100, it will be an impact. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Thank you very much for bringing up this issue. It came to my awareness yesterday. Somebody alerted me to it. So, and I totally agree with you. I think Taft brought up a very important issue that needs to be discussed in our society. As Gambians, we are often very quick to ask for help anytime we encounter difficulties. Some of these issues, we could address them if we approach them with the sense of self-reliance and hard work, right? But I think Taft made it hard. He's stated a hard fact, hard truth, but the way he said it was not quite right. And I can understand why many people are upset about the way he said that. Taft is a businessman. Like you said, we don't need to go into the details of his business. I particularly don't have much knowledge about the details of his business, but I do see him a lot, making his case to government officials. I remember his meetings where the president and many of his cabinet ministers attended. So he's a successful businessman, no doubt about that. And I think one can safely say that he's very hardworking, but hard work is not only what is necessary for success. So there are a lot of people in the Gambia who work much harder than he does, and they have not been lucky enough to have that kind of wealth, not even a tiny pinch of that kind of wealth that Tough enjoys today. So it is not totally a question of hard work, but he, should be thankful that he's been fortunate enough to be interested in an area that turns out to be lucrative, turns out to be creating wealth for him. If he was born in certain societies with the kind of business he's involved in, he probably would not make much money. If he was a Bedouin or probably um, a Yanomama Indian, for example, the kind of projects he's interested in would not mean anything to those people, right? So he would not make much money. So he is lucky. He is fortunate. Like philosophers would call it moral desert. We don't deserve anything. We can only be thankful, and we happen to be in a society and a place where the things we are interested in are valued, and they happen to fetch a lot of money and create wealth for us. Um, like comedians in the U.S. If you're a comedian in the U.S., you should be thankful that you are interested in making jokes and you happen to live in a society who values jokes and stuff like that. You can be pretty rich by doing that. In the Gambia, if you choose to be a comedian, you're probably going to live a poor life, most likely, because most Gambians will see you as somebody who has nothing to do, idle. Nobody, it's not going to fetch you much money, right? So we should be thankful that the skills and talents we have happen to be skills and talents that are valuable to the societies we live in, and therefore it creates wealth for us. So if you look at things in that sense, we don't really deserve anything. There's a lot of luck in all of our doings, right? In our fortunes, right? So Taff should be very helpful to other people. But what he could do um, also is that I know he has this program, foundation or something in the Gambia called Tough Leadership something. He could also attach a scholarship plan to that, where anybody dedicate a certain amount of funds to that, and also anybody who is interested in sponsorship or anything will apply to that fund. And if they meet the requirements and the funds are there, they could get sponsorship. So that will make it a clean, straightforward process that, he doesn't even have to deal with that directly. He can appoint somebody to be responsible for that foundation. That will save him a lot also. But, he happens to be a wealthy person living in a country that is not so wealthy, and a lot of people look up to him for help. It can be frustrating. People should learn to be self-reliant and hardworking, try to help their own situation rather than depending on, asking for help all the time. But I think Taff is very right in what he said. He just didn't say it the right way.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I also wanted to say something. I saw the president, Dr. Conteh, distributing water pumping machines in Banjul to a value of 1.6 million. I understand 1.6 million dollars is, or I think 1.6 million dollars is. Presumably, those machines are from Senegal. How they are obtained, we don't know. And I think the president, this is bringing us to the same point. The president should be very careful about, being seen to be distributing things of value that have been received from other countries or from other business people in his own name. It could create this, air of, lack of transparency around him and possibly bribery and corruption. There should be a procedure how these assets are received and processed and probably delivered to the appropriate ministries or agencies, government agencies to deal with, to distribute them to the beneficiary communities, rather than the president appearing with assets from private people and distributing them in his own name, as the president is donating these to the presidents can donate, but their donations need to be processed through a defined channel that is transparent and well controlled. The closest thing, President Trump, it was claimed, has been donating his salary during his 4-year term as president to, he didn't take any of his salary, he's been donating it. But the manner that has been donated is a well-defined, process that has been laid down by law, right? And much of that money was not brandished around by Trump that, president is donating this and that. Much of the money went to certain government agencies like the Department of Health and Services, education, stuff like that. And much of the public are not even aware of this. It hasn't been in the news. So Gambia should, I know there might not be any law that, prevents this kind of things, but, I hope at some point we are able to be aware of what they call best practices, right? We're able to be careful about this kind of issues because there may not be a problem with Barrow, but we could have a leader who could push this to a point where it can have political repercussions and implications on resource management in the country. That's all, Dr. Conteh. Do you want to say anything, or we go ahead and shut this down?
No, I'm fine now. We're all right.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conteh. We'll meet again next Sunday. Again, we are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. Tell us what you think. Join the conversation. We need to move the Gambia forward somehow, even if only by contributing at the level of ideas only. That's what we have, and that's what we're going to give. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Conteh. We'll meet again.
Take care, sir.
All right, you too.